Well, here we are on Friday morning as usual, and Pat McGart is fit and feisty. Would that be correct, Pat? Is that the way to describe you?
It is, Jude. By the way, I'm in a slightly different location, so I'll apologise for the. I think I'm
It is a
making
wee
an
bit
apparition.
fuzzy, but your words of wisdom are coming through clear and loud.
Absolutely.
That's what people value. That's what both our viewers value.
Exactly.
Okay, there's so much that we could aim at today, Pat. We're spoiled for choice. But I think we should start probably with what has dominated the news, and that is the Armagh service. Now, we've talked about this before, but it has now occurred, and there are several things you could say about it. While it was happening, I don't know if you saw this, but Padre Tobin did a big favour, I think, for Sinn Féin. Maybe he didn't want to, but he did. In the Dáil, he brought up the name of the president and compared his reaction to the invitation with that of the government. And he was ticked off by the speaker, the Can Corla, who said, you're not supposed to be talking about the president in the Dáil, apparently. This is not good form. But Padre Tobin really wrapped it up, I thought. He says, I believe that your government today, that is Fianna Fáil government, is snubbing the president of Ireland by going against his decision and attending the partition commemoration ceremony. How can you square that circle? No matter what euphemism or language you use in this situation, if the president was right not to attend the event due to political nature, how is it that you think it is right for the government to go? I thought that summed it up fairly well, Pat, would you say?
Absolutely, Jude. You know, Jude, when the president made a decision, I can't remember who it was, but one of the polling companies did a quick poll for, I think it was the Sunday Politics program.
Yeah.
And 81% of the people supported the president's decision. So, Jude, you can't turn around and sort of say, change that. And by the way, Jude, I took it down. Dr. Salah Yambasu, who is the president of the Methodist Church, says what partition had done, it has left it blighted by sectarian division, terrible injustice, destructive violence, and by a one-lose political attitude. You know, Jude, that's a pretty damning summation of what partition has done to this country. And like this thing that marking it, that it wasn't a celebration, Jude, when you're holding something that actually marks the founding of the state, you're celebrating it. You're trying to say language doesn't mean what language means.
Did you notice? I don't know if you saw it, but after the ceremony, they had a word with Boris Johnson, and Johnson, as usual, put his foot in it up to the thigh. He said it was a wonderful celebration, and then he tried to bite back the words. He used the celebration word. And I mean, in every respect, it was political. Whatever about a celebration, it certainly was a political event. There's no doubt about that. Even Eamon Martin, Archbishop Eamon Martin, he tried to sort of humanize it, but he was caught in a bind. He realized that so many people were opposed to nationalist representation at this event. And the Catholic Church would see itself as representative of the nationalist part of the population. So it had to some extent be nationalist and the other side just be purely religious. But he said, I have to face the difficult truth that perhaps we in the churches could have done more to deepen our understanding of each other and to bring healing and peace to our divided and wounded communities. I think that is bunkum. And I'll tell you why. Because he's saying that the presumably himself as Archbishop of Armagh, Catholic Archbishop, and the Protestant Archbishop of Armagh, and other denominations like Methodist and so on, Presbyterian, should have had more meetings and been closer in communication. That, in my opinion, that's not the problem at all. The problem with Eamon Martin is that he's not close enough in touch with his people, with the Catholic nationalist people. That's the difficulty. Not that they didn't spend enough time chin-wagging with Protestant bishops. I remember in 1969, Pat, and you may remember it too, that the Bishop of Derry at the time, Dr. Farron, and I think it was a Presbyterian president or someone like that, went on a tour of the Bogside after the smoke and rioting had cooled down. to show their solidarity with each other and try to bring people together. It had nothing. It was totally irrelevant. They both, I mean, Farron, as Eamon Martin, lived in a castle, literally a castle. We refer to it as the bishop's. Oh, sorry, not a castle, a palace, the bishop's palace in Derry. So the problem is really that they're out of touch with the people that they're supposed to be representative of, or who would be in their community. I could go on for a long time in this, Pat, because I feel very strongly on it, but I'll let you say.
I think a lot of people do, Jude, and I think Pater Tobin summed it up pretty well, Jude. There's something wrong to Jude when the government seem to think they go out of its way to go there. I think the government, I think Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael particularly have lost touch totally with the feelings of the vast party. It's almost as if they're living in a little bubble, government bubble, where, you know, West Britism, and I keep using that term, but it's almost pervasive in government circles. They seem to want all the time to sort of a forelock tug and all the rest, and they use this as on the guise of reaching out. Jude, partition was a terrible disaster for this country, of which we have all paid a terrible price, or for which we have all paid a terrible price. And the government going along, Jude, there were so many ways they could have said, look, we wish the unionist people well, if anti-celebrated, that's fine. But for us, politically, it's an impossible thing. And they could have made it very simple. But to go along for partition, and even apparently Boris was there with his mask, with his Union Jack on. You know,
yes.
Okay, maybe it's just another Boris blunder, but there you go.
I thought that the more you see, the people there were claiming that it was a religious service marking, but the more they talked, the more it became political. For example, Archbishop Eamon Martin remembered as a boy going to his granny's in Inishowen and how he was able to go over smoothly. And then he said these military fortifications were built, and Derry was cut off from its natural heartland. And people of his community really felt a deep sadness and loss with the coming of partition. So the more they spoke, the less it became a religious service, and the more it became a political consideration or discussion even.
Yeah.
And if you say the president of the president of the Methodist Church, was very clear on the fact that partition had been, for at least some people, very bad news, and he suggested that to both communities and to North and South, it was very bad news. I think, Pat, and I said this before, I think the big thing that happened, the sort of trigger for all of this, was Michael D. Higgins refusing the invitation. Had he, Stephen Collins wrote in this in the Irish Times today, if he had taken that invitation, there wouldn't have been a problem. I don't think it would have passed off. We would have said Michael Higgins is doing what Michael Higgins usually does, going up and being nice to unionists, and the service would have passed without mention. When he said he wasn't going, the government, the Southern government, was put in an awful spot, because if they didn't go, they looked as if they were holding the unionists at arm's length. If they did go, it looks like they were, as you would have said, celebrating or marking the 100 years since partition. So it really was, it was like watching men walking into a bog and getting deeper and deeper with every step that they took.
You know the old one, Jude, when you're in a hole, stop digging, and they kept digging.
I think this is going to reverberate long. It's not very long to the elections in the north, and I suspect it's not going to be very long to the elections in the south, because on The View, I don't know if you caught it, but on The View, Jim O'Callaghan was appearing alongside Pierce Doherty. Now, they were both beamed into the View studio, and Jim Callaghan agreed almost word for word with what Pierce Doherty was saying. He said, what do you, Mark Carruthers says, what do you think of your leader sending a Fianna Fáil representative? And he said, it wasn't a Fianna Fáil representative, it was a government representative. What was that Fianna Fáil guy, the chief whip, Jack something or another?
Jack Chambers.
Yeah, Jack Chambers. He was trying to distance Fianna Fáil from this and was saying that, no, you could see perfectly why Pierce Doherty and company didn't want to go to it, that it was a commemoration of partition, which had been a disaster. And he talked that from the same hymn book all the way as Pierce about the need for proper discussions, which they would welcome with unionism, but not ceremonies celebrating events which were sort of triumphs for unionism. Anyway, it's a sort of a sad little affair when you think about it. From one point of view, and from another point of view, it's pretty hilarious watching people put their foot in it and then try to get out of it. What was Boris thinking of, do you think, Pat, when he said it was a wonderful celebration? Had they not told him?
I think he has a habit of just speaking without thinking, you know, and I think it's like, Jude, he's not a nuanced politician. He certainly is not. He never chooses his words carefully. He just says whatever comes into his head. He's made a career out of buffoonery, but he gets away with it because everybody thinks, oh, that's just Boris and that's the way he is. You know, whether it's calculated or whether it's, you know, unfortunate, I just don't know.
Yeah, I wonder will that be there also was some controversy about the fact that Belfast City Hall, they had plans to light up Belfast City Hall in, I think it was green and blue lights, to mark the partition, the partition of Ireland. And the Shinners in the council wouldn't agree to it, so it couldn't happen. And again, I think they were quite right. I mean, if you're, you know, if you're going to mark an event which was the central problem for the last 100 years, to me, it doesn't make very much sense. I'm sorry. Well, not a bit sorry. I'm actually quite glad. Okay, let's move on to matters of political health, from matters of political health to matters of literal health. COVID numbers, Pat, are rising again. Since this loosening up, there's been a surge, and they're beginning to get worried that, I mean, you could get to see, I think they have something like, what did they say last night? Something like 50 people in ICU, and if that got to 150, the system would just be overwhelmed. What's your thinking with it? Right, Pat? I mean, they're going ahead with loosening up.
Well, you see all the schools and everything else. Dude, it's been a terrible mess down south. They're sort of saying you can go to a nightclub, but you'll have to wear a mask and you'll have to. Dude, that's sort of defeating the purpose of going to a nightclub when you're 18. You know, but do
you think they'll wear? You think they'll wear them when they get there?
Well, the heck. But Jude, the thing about it is, I read there Radker saying the position.
Say that again, Pat. You froze for a second there. Say that again. Pat, could you say that again?
The reimposition of restrictions, he says, cannot be ruled out.
Yeah. Well, that'd be a last resort for them because Michael Martin almost promised there'd be no going back again. So they're caught no matter what way they look. I saw some figures and they said that 52% of the people being treated in ICU, that's over half of the people being treated in ICU, had not been vaccinated.
Oh, that's unbelievable.
Despite the fact that only 10% of the population had not been vaccinated. So you have this little hard core of people who are accounting for more than half of the infections directly. So God knows how many of the other 50% that are in ICU were infected by those people who haven't been vaccinated. So you wonder, why do people not get vaccinated? Is it laziness or craziness?
Well, that's a very good expression because I think it could be a mixture of both. But Jude, I think I would lean more towards the second. There's an anti-vax thing out there. It started basically with Donald Trump for purely political reasons in America during the election. He was playing the tough man that we can ride this out and like I am a great president, and he didn't want the whole thing, American economy shut down. So he started to spin this is not as bad and people don't need to pay too much attention because that was going to interrupt his presidency. And everything that flowed from that since, you know, all these sort of conspiracy theories that it's out to destroy the president and all this sort of stuff. And Jude, I have talked to a few people. Another thing that really bugs me, Jude, like, if you don't want to take the vaccine, that's fine. Well, I'm not even sure that's fine, but the number of people who come on and telling other people not to, that it was a conspiracy theory by big pharma, and that check out these people who are promoting vaccines and all this sort of stuff. And Jude, some of these guys had read deep state stuff, that it was all about taking over world globalist government and all that. Jude, it's insane. It's crazy. And the simple thing, if you get people, world medical experts coming on, Jude, and they're saying, look, this is serious and should be taken serious, who should you believe? Should you believe somebody who's read something on Facebook, or should you take a world-leading virologist? Take your pick.
Yeah, the irony of all this is that people who are refusing to be vaccinated, if they felt sick, they go to the doctor under normal, leave aside now if COVID had come in. If they had a pain somewhere that really was severe, they'd go to the doctor, they'd trust the doctor. And if the doctor said you should go to hospital, they go into hospital. But the vaccination, this vaccination for against COVID, they somehow have this notion that it's all sorts of stuff being injected into their bodies. And I saw yesterday on TV that there was a sort of a push to try to persuade people, and they managed to get vaccinations for something like 1,000 people yesterday who hadn't up to that point been vaccinated. The trouble with this, Pat, I think is, now you can tell me what you think. I think that, the way when you have a discussion or you're debating with somebody on Facebook or in real life or whatever, and you're arguing about something. I was reading an article on this and it says, the fact is 99.9% of people don't change their opinions. If their views are challenged, they double down on it. They get more entrenched than ever. So if you say to somebody not wearing a mask, you should be wearing a mask, they'll never wear a mask. The only way to get people to wear a mask, the only way to get people to wear masks, the only way to get people to get vaccinated is to persuade them. I frankly think you should be offering, say 500 quid a jab, and you'd see you would soon see the 10% of crazies or lazies get in there and get their arms vaccinated.
But Jude, the evidence about Brexit disaster in Britain is staring people in the face. Yet you'll see ministers coming on and people coming on thinking we're taking back control, build back better and all this sort of stuff. Like despite the fact that they have trouble getting lorry drivers, despite the fact that there are empty shelves in the supermarkets, despite the fact that they can't get chicken pluckers, despite the fact that fruit isn't getting picked.
You did say chicken pluckers, didn't you, Pat?
Chicken pluckers, I did say that. And despite the fact that he called 200,000 pigs or whatever it was. Dude, and yet they tell you that Brexit's been a brilliant success.
Yeah. Well, you see, they have to stick to their guns now. As I was saying, that's what they tend to. Well, we would be the same. Let's face it, Pat. Somebody challenged
some people who still think it's a good idea.
Yeah. I suppose it's just that they happen to be doing something that's could be disastrous for others. Whereas if we hold an opinion, that's a different thing. I'd be sort of hopeful, that they will get more people to, especially those who are lazy. I think the crazies you'll never get, no matter what you do. But I think the lazies, those who just have young people who can't be bothered, I think they can be persuaded, and they should be doing everything they can and give them incentives. They had a thing in some country in Europe, I think, where they had a TV show and celebrities and acts and all the rest, and people were shown live on TV coming on stage, so to speak, to get their vaccination. So they used the idea that people love being on TV to get them to have the vaccination, which they were resisting. It really would be too bad if after all the efforts and all the movement forward and all the vaccinations, nearly 90% of the people in your state, your 20 state, have now been vaccinated. And yet this little hardcore is holding out. In the north, of course, people are still dying, but that goes without saying. Okay, let's move on to, you would think it was a blast from the past. The trouble is it's a blast from the present, and that is Trump and truth. You have something to say about that, I think, Pat. He's setting up something.
Jude, I thought the irony of ironies, he's setting up his own, basically his own social media platform. Now, I don't know how successful but it's already funded by 200 million by private investors. But Jude, the fact that he called it truth is a remarkably irony-free. Like, this is a man, according to the Washington Post, was told 30,000, I think 730 something untruths or misleading statements during his term as president. So he set up, and one day he reached a peak. He told 22 direct lies, and yet he comes out and says, and it's true. Jude, you said it last week, and in fact, I used your words in a column earlier this week. We're living in a post-truth age. Telling the truth, remember years ago, your word was your bond. And remember, even, you have to give them this, years ago, if a member of parliament, even inadvertently told an untruth in parliament, if you're a minister, you had to resign.
That's right.
Yes. It was a matter of integrity, and it was a matter of that your word was your bond, that when you said something, you could stand over it. Jude, it's become a joke. And Trump, there was a picture of him on social media last week signing Bibles for people. Now, when a man who pays off porn stars, who has been involved, children by 3 different women, has God knows how many affairs, is signing Bibles, and people are sort of taking this as, there's something wrong with your religion if you're getting Donald Trump to sign your Bible.
Yeah, it's working though. A lot of people are still scared that he's going to make a comeback. He never has been away. He just hasn't been on Twitter because he's banned from it. But they found that he's setting up this alternative system called Truth Social, which will sort of be the Trump version of Twitter, which he's been banned from. But they found that when that was announced, the searches for Truth Social, people went onto Google and searched for it, was 10 times the searches for WhatsApp. So there's a lot of people for one reason or another, want to know more about this Truth Social system, social media that Trump is setting up. The other thing is they have issued this Truth Social, has issued a statement saying that they're not going to allow any participants to disparage, tarnish, or otherwise harm, in our opinion, us or this site. So it's going to be the proverbial echo chamber. If you don't agree with our truth, they're saying, you say something conflicts with our truth, get off the truth, because we have the truth.
Yeah.
It's against this sort.
In other words, but Jude, when you consider the fact that a lot of the Congress in America now is looking at the January 6th riot, and the fact that Trump was peril there quite recently by Bob Woodward, and I think it's Robert Acosta, where he had a 7-point plan strategy to Pence to discard the votes when they were counting them on January 6th to ensure that he would stay on as president. Dude, America democracy was under serious threat from Trump. And yet there are people there who still think that he's the best thing since sliced pan. So you sort of go, what's going on here?
But it's this whole thing. I honestly think it is this thing. People take up positions, and then when they are face opposition, as any sane person would provide opposition to the Trumpite position, they get stuck in all the more. They don't abandon it. They reinforce the position they're in. I think they made one mistake, Pat, in this Truth Social, this new network they're planning to set up to rival Twitter. And that is that they've said they won't have anybody on who's going to say stuff that'll conflict with their views or say anything bad about Mr. Trump. The fact of the matter is, social media, as you know better than I do, social media thrives on a degree of opposition. It's far more interesting to go onto a site and argue with the guy about something than it is to go onto a site and agree with them. Maybe that's the problem we have, Pat. We should be fighting more.
More with each other.
We could even have 3 viewers, not just 2.
Not a normal 2.
Okay. Last point, because we want to keep this short this morning because we went way over the time limit the last time. You've something to say about Nigel Farage, and I think I missed that. I didn't see that.
And no, Jude, I know your toilet tinkler of the week.
Aye.
Nigel Farage, he's doing these sort of birthday greetings, which is, I think he's charging about 75 to 85 for a pop. Right. Last week he got done doing Up the Ra, and he got done. Now Jude, the second
explain that one, Pat. I explain that one, please. That's great. I just remember that there.
He was here's a special for my friend in Ireland, whatever his name, Brian. And this is from his good friend, and he finishes Up the Ra, and he claimed afterwards he didn't realize that was a reference to the IRA. He said he didn't know it, and then he got caught on another one which escapes my memory at the minute. But my son sent me one this morning where it says, here's a special group for a crowd of guys in New South Wales. They're a gallant band of volunteers, and their leader is Gary Shannon.
Say it again. You froze there, Pat, for a minute.
Basically, it keeps coming up in mine. It says your internet is unstable, but like myself. But
But he says the last line of what you were saying about Nigel.
He says it was from somebody in New South Wales, and they said the leader of this Ballon Gang of volunteers was Shan South from Gary Owen. So he's now quoting Shan South as his story. So he's got caught third time. And the state he should have copped on, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, you see, I see he jumps up all the time on my screen. Talking about making fistfuls of money. I think it's Bitcoin or something he wants people to invest in. And he keeps saying, you want to double money, and say, he sounds like a guy who used to be in Bundoran when I was a kid. He was known as the Bargain King, and he would say, I'm going to sell these lovely candlesticks or whatever. I'm not going to charge you £100. I'm not going to charge you £50. I'm not even going to charge you £20. I'm going to give away these for £10. Can you believe it, ladies and gentlemen? That's Nigel Farage for my money. You know, he's that kind of sleazy salesman who puts his foot on the
throat. You know, at one stage he was a serious political player. Like how often now it's actually become a figure almost of ridicule. You know, like he's got caught so often doing stupid, but then, you know, it doesn't seem to affect him with certain elements of the British electorate.
Yeah, well, of course, the funny thing is that his party, he had a very powerful party. His party won seats in did they have seats in the House of Commons? They certainly had seats in Europe.
Europe, yeah, they had quite a few seats in Europe. Jude, they got 4 million votes in one of the elections, which, had there been proportional representation, would have given them a considerable number of seats. But you know, I don't think they got a seat in Westminster, despite the fact that they got 4 million votes.
Was that Boris sucking up those seats from him, or? I guess
I can't remember, Jude, but I presume that it was the first past the post system. Got, you know, in each constituency they got a good, in certain constituencies they got very good votes, but just didn't get enough to get over the line.
Did I ever tell you about the time at one of those airports in England? I got a selfie with Nigel Farage.
Good God.
Well, I that's more or less what my children said when I told them. They gave out hell to me. Well, I couldn't resist it. Here he was. He was right beside me. So I said, "Oh, Nigel." He was talking on the phone. He's all on it. And then he took a selfie. I lost it immediately. But it seemed the natural thing to do. I should have kept it and then used cryptic or uncomplimentary comments.
You can imagine what you could have done with that time.
Use it as a dartboard. Okay, Pat, I think that wraps up the week.
Jude, I must apologise. I'm in a certain location where the internet isn't so good. So
yeah. It's not bad. Worked okay, I think, Pat. But you're better times ahead. Yes. Okay, you look after yourself on the weekend, Pat. I'm going to talk to you on Monday.
Talk to you on Monday.
Okay. All the best. Thank you.
Bye.